Jesse Jackson, the 84-year-old, passed away this morning in the U.S. city of Chicago. Among those who have sent their condolences is South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa, who says Jackson has contributed to the attainment of freedom in South Africa. Ramaphosa spokesperson Vincent Magwenya says Jackson was a champion for justice, equality and empowerment.
On behalf of all South Africans, President Ramaphosa extends his condolences to the Jackson family, the Rainbow Push Coalition, and the many organizations within the American civil rights movement and in causes elsewhere in the world who were inspired by the Reverend Jesse Jackson's principles and leadership. Reverend Jesse Jackson's irrepressible campaigns against apartheid and his support for the liberation struggle was a towering contribution to the global anti-apartheid cause.
Move on. And that was Vincent Magwenya speaking on behalf of South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. Other notable tributes have come from, U.S. civil rights movement colleagues and two-time Democratic presidential candidate Jesse Jackson. That is, he died at the age of 84, pouring a prompting of widespread commiserations. We had people like Kamala Harris, who is a former vice president in the United States, who also had a lot to add about the life and works of Reverend Jesse Jackson, who, of course, is a civil rights leader who carried forward the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., mobilized voter registration efforts, forged broad coalitions across race. To a man who moved a lot of people, who certainly has made it to the annals of history in so many ways, as tributes continue to pour in. Following the announcement of his death, we're speaking here about American politician, world-renowned civil rights leader Reverend Jesse Jackson, the 84-year-old, passed away this morning in the U.S. city of Chicago. Among those who have sent their condolences is South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa, who says Jackson has contributed to the attainment of freedom in South Africa. Ramaphosa spokesperson Vincent Magwenya says Jackson was a champion for justice, equality and empowerment.
On behalf of all South Africans, President Ramaphosa extends his condolences to the Jackson family, the Rainbow Push Coalition, and the many organizations within the American civil rights movement and in causes elsewhere in the world who were inspired by the Reverend Jesse Jackson's principles and leadership. Reverend Jesse Jackson's irrepressible campaigns against apartheid and his support for the liberation struggle was a towering contribution to the global anti-apartheid cause.
Move on. And that was Vincent Magwenya speaking on behalf of South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. Other notable tributes have come from, U.S. civil rights movement colleagues and two-time Democratic presidential candidate Jesse Jackson. That is, he died at the age of 84, pouring a prompting of widespread commiserations. We had people like Kamala Harris, who is a former vice president in the United States, who also had a lot to add about the life and works of Reverend Jesse Jackson, who, of course, is a civil rights leader who carried forward the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., mobilized voter registration efforts, forged broad coalitions across race and class with his Rainbow Coalition movement. His commitment to justice, equality and empowerment made him a defining voice in American public life for more than 5 decades. So, right, let's find out now from one of those who was inspired by the life and works of Reverend Jesse Jackson, and that is in the United States, in Atlanta specifically. We speak to a former official of the city of Atlanta, Harvard Law graduate Wilton Lawrence Larry Wallace, as he's known. He worked with Reverend Jackson intermittently over the decades. And condolences to you, his family, and other colleagues. And thank you so much for speaking to us. I know it's a difficult time to actually gather your thoughts while you're still mourning.
No question, but I'm happy to do so in honor of one of the world's leaders. He's been a leader in a variety of areas, whether it comes to world affairs, rescuing hostages, fighting for civil rights, running for president of the United States, and many, many other activities where he has served and helped those of us who have been oppressed.
And I want to talk about his musings. You are obviously within the realm of law, constitutional law. And one of the things that he said was that civil rights was the unfinished business of democracy. Now, I want to hear from you from a comparative constitutional law perspective. How did this framing of what has happened in the United States, what is happening now in the United States resonate with particularly the post-colonial era, if we can describe it as that, given, as I said, what is happening now in the United States?
Well, the foundation exists in our Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, decree and do establish the government of the United States. It was not perfect then. It's not perfect now, but it's much better over the last 250 years.
And his campaigns really focused on, acting against corporate discrimination, financial exclusion. He anticipated today's global debates on racial capitalism. What are some of the legacies that the younger generation, who may not have been exposed fully to his passion, his sacrifice, the work that he's done, the legacy that he leaves behind in light of that?
The Reverend Dr. Jackson's organization, People United to Save Humanity, entered into these contracts or agreements with various multinational corporations, including Toyota, the vehicle manufacturer, McDonald's, and many, many others. And those agreements set goals and timetables to increase the diversity in jobs, in products, in all kinds of rights for various discriminated groups, including Jews, women, Blacks, Asians, and others. And those agreements provided a basis after they were struck to have Operation Push enforce them. One of the things we have had as great difficulty in civil rights is that even when major steps were made with great platitudes, there was no mechanism in many of those promises to follow up and enforce. Throughout his brilliance with People United to Save America or to save humanity, they always had that enforcement mechanism. It allowed for increase in diversity on the board of directors, increases in senior management, increases in sponsorship of various activities that would promote those noble goals.
And I want to look at, as I mentioned, he is much recognized worldwide for his push against racism rather as a global system. He's done that in America. He's fought for it in Africa. I was actually just saying to my colleagues, the first time I met him was at Ghana's Jubilee celebration of independence, and that was seen as a huge pan-African moment, and he attended that and he spoke very passionately about that. So I just want to look at where the United States is now and the work that he's done just in challenging the foundations of that institutional legal foundations that still exist post World War II, and what those who are fighting for civil rights in the now can learn from his work.
Well, where we are today is that the foundation, the initial work, a lot of progress has been made. But as recently as the last 12 months, some of those institutions, some of those pieces of the foundation have begun to be challenged, and other forces seek to turn them back. What we need to head in the direction of now is to say to those forces, we will not go back. We must go forward. And when you have the type of population shifts that we're having worldwide, with many more of the groups that have been oppressed being larger, stronger, and more populated each year you go by. For example, in the United States, 2013 was the first year that more white people in the United States died than were born. And so some of those evil forces, and it's not all of them, but some of them, they're structurally reduced, will continue to be reduced based on population projections for at least the next 40 years. So the groups that have grown, have expanded, are continuing to expand, will do so over that period of time. So we are not going away. That progress is not going to be erased. And those who care today for the benefit of all people must fight to improve things and to follow that language from the Constitution to keep building a more perfect union.
Mr. Wallace, you worked with him over the decades. Can you just share your experiences of not only meeting him, but I'd like to hear about his personal theology, that of servant leadership. We forget that in his charisma as a politician, as a human being, that he was, of course, Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Well, I'll give you 3 starting points. Martin Luther King was born 20 years before me. My mother was born 19 years before me. Jesse Jackson was born 7 years before me. And because of my family activism, I was exposed to King, to Jackson, and many others early in my teenage life, and have continued interaction with them. With regard to the Reverend Dr. Jackson himself, I first became involved with him when I was the person on my university campus to invite speakers. And so I invited him as a speaker, became personally responsibility for driving him from the airport, checking in and paying for his hotel room, and being sort of an escort during the week he was on campus. And so we had various interesting side conversations, and it helped me better understand where he was coming from and where he wanted to go. Even though subsequent to that week of interaction, I didn't have much direct contact with him until his two presidential campaigns in 84 and 85. He ran both times. My wife at the time was chair of his campaign for the state of Virginia. And so every campaign event that touched Virginia, every visit he made to Virginia, we were again responsible for escorting him. And we had multiple private conversations. And it really goes back to something that he echoed, as he did many times in his speech at Vanderbilt, where he said, I am somebody. And he implored the crowd to repeat after him, I am somebody. And that engendered a sense that we were not paupers at the table, but we deserved fairness, opportunity. We deserved a chance. We deserved that we had earned, and we deserved that society could provide us. And in many ways, society was very kind to some of those of us who came into the world roughly impoverished. And he was a real leader, which is why my quote for him is not civil rights leader, it's not political leader. He was, in many, many ways, a world leader.
And indeed,
in many areas.
Because he was involved in a lot of transnational solidarity work, and he could walk a tight rope between Republicans, for instance, and civil rights movement leaders and activists. But I want you to tell me about your experience of how he could say something that is much needed, that is hard, but at the same time be able to assuage a situation. When was the last time, or something that really stands out to you, where he was able to navigate that, walk that tightrope of two very competing priorities?
Well, the truth is that a leader like him achieves things because they can expand between the two virtues of strength and compassion. He had the compassion for the least of these, but he also brought out of himself and of others the strength to move ahead, the strength to improve. He will be dearly missed, but his contributions, I believe, will continue to serve us well. And there are a lot of other leaders out there who would do well for us and for themselves to adopt that combination of strength and compassion.
Mr. Wallace, I'm just going to give you an opportunity to share your condolences, not only with his family, his friends from far field, and his colleagues. I was speaking to James Gomez earlier on, and I know he worked very closely with him for a very, very long time. And that's how I was able to, connect with Reverend Jackson over the years. And he was saying he's absolutely gutted that he really feels like he's lost a father. So how would you like to extend words of comfort, not only to people like James, his family, and others who worked with Reverend Jackson for so many years, of whom he was a father figure, an uncle, a friend, a mentor?
There are so many individuals, so many groups that deserve to receive condolences because of Jesse's contributions to the rest of us. And I agree with you that longtime personal aides, another one, Yolanda Caraway, there are many, and a lot of the contributions, he even sacrificed is the word I would use, a big part of his family by, after him getting involved in running for president, he then delivered two of his children to be United States congressmen. One remains in congressman now, and the other is seeking to come back and is running in primaries very soon. His wife,